Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The Browns dropped another heartbreaker in Baltimore, falling to 2-5 with their fourth straight loss. Now it's an important few days lies ahead as the Browns host the Bengals on Monday night with the NFL trade deadline Tuesday afternoon. Here, as always, to break it all down is Dave Chudowski of Go, the WKYC Morning News. Hey, Chud.
Scott, how are you? Hey, you nailed it, man. Final score, you hit it, 23-20.
I know. I didn't want to brag myself, so I'm glad you tweeted that out and brought it up because that's rare that it happens, number one. And yeah, rare and proud of it. So we call that a noser in the press box if you get the complete score right. So I was happy about that. Not happy, the Browns lost, but
Yeah.
happy that I got the prediction correct.
Yeah, because I mean that we're in the prediction business, right? It does not happen often. I think in all the years doing the pregame huddle on Channel 3, I maybe hit one or two from like 2007 to 2018. So I mean, it just doesn't happen that often. I'm not sure if we've ever hit one on this podcast before. I know we've come close within a point or two, but just to get it right on the nose, man. Yeah, you deserve props for that because that is not easy.
I appreciate that.
Well, Scott, let's move on now. And I gotta say, all week long last week you hear, well, if they just beat the Ravens and if they just beat the Bengals, they'll be right where they need to be. It's kind of like if they just draft this guy, if they just do that, it's always the if game, right? It's always the hey, maybe this will happen, but right now with this team, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, I think what makes it more difficult, especially for the fans and the players and the team, is it's not that hard to connect those dots to beating the Ravens, to beating the Jets, to beating the Chargers, to beating the Falcons. If Amari Cooper doesn't get called for offensive pass interference, they take the lead with 2 minutes left, right? And we can go down the line for the whole season. So I understand your point, and it's completely correct that they just have not been able to make the plays at the key moments to turn close losses into key victories. Having said that, you can point to, man, they were so close. And, I think that makes it more frustrating. I also think it's not absurd to say that this team is better than 2-5, but the reality is they're 2-5. And I think Baltimore was just another obvious example of their failures in critical moments. And, and all you have to do is point to the OPI, and we can break down whether or not they were good calls or not. Right. But that's not all of it. You had a Jacoby Brissett fumble that led to an easy Ravens touchdown. You had a big punt return that led to a Ravens field goal. And there's 10 points just from field position alone. And when you take a step back, obviously that's a huge difference from when you lose a game 23-20.
Yeah, you're right. They are better than their record. No question. And also I got to tell you, watching that game, I'm trying to think what the word is. It's not impressed or proud of them or, I'm trying to think of the right thing, but it was better than I thought it was going to be. Let's put it that way. I mean, I predicted them to lose by 10, although, losing by 10 could be a late touchdown that makes a close game look not as close. But they definitely had the chance to win this game. I mean, it's not like they, were embarrassed by any means.
No, and I thought, obviously the opening drive was impressive. And we've seen that throughout the course of the year. And I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign for Kevin Stefanski as a play caller, that the script is so solid that it usually works, right? The Ravens hadn't given up a point on an opening possession this year. And the Browns marched down the field, combination of Nick Chubb runs, passes, and it's a touchdown. They score a field goal on their second drive. It's 10 points. And then they go through a lull. And that happens too often where they go through a lull in the middle of the games. And then they finish strong offensively. They score a touchdown, or they get a field goal, a touchdown, get back in position for, that final drive we can break down. So you look at the offense, you go, okay, it's kind of a mixed bag. Defensively, they were a lot better than they've been, during this 4-game losing streak, really starting with that Atlanta game where they got gashed against the run in the second half, and then you had the Chargers game, and then the Patriots game. The Ravens ran for 160, but they averaged like 3.6 yards a carry. You can live with that. Lamar Jackson completed 9 passes. Mark Andrews, stud tight end, didn't have any completion, didn't have any receptions. So I thought
amazing.
It really was. I mean, stunning, right? Like stunning. You're watching the whole game going, where's Mark Andrews? I mean, the only time they got the ball in his hands was he pitched one to Lamar on 4th and 1, and then he got a handoff on 3rd.
A bizarre play.
Yeah.
A bizarre play. And to interrupt you, because that was going to be my next topic. If you would have told me that Lamar would have had those numbers and Mandrews would have not caught a ball, I would have been like, Browns win.
Right. Yeah. I know, which is one of the kind of those head scratchers that we see all the time from this team and this franchise. But so there is a significant step up in the defense now, or there was Sunday in Baltimore. Now they only had the 1 turnover, but it was a huge turnover that gave them the chance at the end of the game. I guess the point of the struggles were, 160 total on the ground isn't ideal, and they couldn't get off the field. I think Baltimore was 7 for 15 on 3rd down and 2 for 2 on 4th down. So it's 9 conversions when you have a chance to get off the field. And that's not going to cut it, right? That allowed Baltimore to have a big edge in time of possession. So, it wasn't perfect, but it shouldn't have to be perfect. Maybe that's the whole point of this. It shouldn't have to be perfect for this team to win games, yet that's almost how it feels. Like if there's 1 or 2 key mistakes and they just can't recover.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's hit a couple of the there's 2 things I want to talk about from the game, and then I actually want to move on to the Bengals.
Yeah.
The first one is the penalties. Do you think that was a penalty on Amari Cooper? I've heard 2 different schools of thought. I've heard that it was blatantly a penalty, and then I've also had people have the opinion that that's typical stuff that you see. And the thing about it is he didn't really show much emotion or try to argue the point, right?
No, and to me that's a sign of guilt, and really from the whole team. Like I didn't see a big reaction. I was there, right, in Baltimore. I didn't see a big reaction from the team.
Yeah.
Like they just started walking back to the huddle. So you see that plenty of times where a guy, there's hand fighting, there's a contact, there's no call on the offense. But I thought it was the right call. I did, and I think what's frustrating is the word, right? And I got to find a new word. But if you're a fan, he was open. Like he didn't need to extend that arm. And I think when you extend that arm as a receiver, it makes it easy for the official to throw the flag because he can see it. It wasn't subtle. Now, I don't think he gained a huge advantage there, but he didn't need to gain anything because he had half step on Marcus Peters, who the Browns picked on, and the throw was right there. Like all he has to do is stay there, stay between Peters and the ball, and it's a completion and probably a touchdown. So,
yeah,
I guess that's what's aggravating.
I agree with you. I didn't even question it when I saw it happen before the flag. I even saw the flag. I'm like, oh, that's coming back. There's no way that's a touchdown. But the reason I asked you is I don't know who it was. I can't remember, but I heard someone on the radio or somewhere this week was adamantly upset about it. And I'm not talking about a fan. I'm talking about, someone who covers the Browns, and I can't remember who it was. But I was kind of surprised. I was like, I don't know. The other penalty, you could debate that one for sure. But the Cooper, start. I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on Cooper. And, Cooper after the game admitted as much. That, there was contact. Yeah, you can call it. It doesn't always get called. Well, okay, fair enough. But, and then talking about penalties, and I want to talk about that false start, but there was a roughing the passer that they threw a flag and picked up earlier in the game against Jacoby Brissett. I thought was more egregious. I thought that should have stuck. And then there was a hit, and I'm trying to remember now if it was the last drive or not, where I thought they could have called another roughing the passer on Brissett. I thought he took a late hit, and there was no flag. So to me, those were, if you're going to complain, I would complain about those 2. And actually, it was on that last drive. He threw the deep pass to Peoples-Jones, like a 37-yarder. And I thought there was a late hit on Brissett, maybe 2, like he kind of got crunched from both sides. I thought those were 2. I'd complain more about those 2 than the Cooper play and maybe even the false start, Chud.
Yeah. But did you see a false start there? Did you see anything?
Here's the thing. And I don't know, I watch a bunch of football. and I like to think I pay attention to the snap and the hold and the kicks. I don't know if I ever pay that much attention to what Charlie Hewlett does every time he snaps the ball. Because to me, he clearly moves the ball. Now, it's kind of almost like a pitcher's set, right? He comes set and Clevenger moves his feet 100 times, or Karinchak does all his crazy stuff. Like, I think there's a pattern, and if you have that pattern, then it's not really a penalty. But I thought he moved the ball, and if the Ravens were looking for that and looking for a reason to jump to get the Browns a false start, I thought there was enough movement of the ball to kind of precipitate that. And then once the Ravens move, then about 6 Browns guys move. And did some of them move before there's contact? I've heard that argument made from NFL. I think might have been Gene Steratore on the broadcast when I was rewatching it. And if the Ravens cross the neutral zone but don't make contact, and then the Browns move, then it's the Browns penalty. So, it seems ticky-tack, and I get the anger from Browns fans, but I don't think it was a crazy bad call, just because I do think you can see Charlie Hewlett do something to the ball. Now, I'm not an expert there, so I don't know if that should be enough to warrant a penalty, and or the Ravens get away saying, well, that's why we jumped. Because I think the fishy thing is John Harbaugh, the Ravens coach, immediately yelled he moved the ball. And there's about 8 guys between him and the ball. So I don't know how you could see that. So maybe the Ravens just had that in their head is, hey, this is what we're on alert for. Because I think some teams offensively will try to get you to draw off, try to draw an offsides by maybe finagling the ball a little bit. Stefanski said the Browns wouldn't do that in that situation. But, it feels like the Ravens were looking out for that.
Yeah, and who's to say he's going to make it from 5 yards? I know that does make a big difference, but I mean, it wasn't like it was close there, partially blocked. Whatever.
It could have gotten blocked from 56, right? I mean,
yeah, right, yeah, exactly. So, it seems like the big topic in Browns land this week, and it's been all year, is the usage of Nick Chubb. How do you feel about that? Because I mean, the guy is right there, tops in rushing and touchdowns, right, in the league, and do you feel like they're using him the correct way? I mean, people are upset, saying, he's not being used properly.
Yeah, they are. And I've given this a lot of thought, Chud. And here's where I've kind of settled is overall, I think they're pretty close to using him the right way. He's getting, the other day he had 16 rushes and 2 catches, right? So that's 18 touches. Now, what's the ideal number? Is it 20, 22? And maybe those 4 carries make the difference in a ballgame, or the 4 touches, right? If he averages 7 yards a touch, and all of a sudden you're 30 extra yards, does that make the difference in the game? Maybe, especially when you're losing by 1, 2, and 3 points. So I get that argument, and I think maybe my perfect number is right there, 20, 21, 22, like, because you don't want to overwork him, and that's why you have Kareem Hunt, so you don't have to overwork Chubb. And you have to throw the ball. I'm not of the belief, we've talked about this, where you got to run it 45 times a game. Like, I don't think that works week in, week out in the NFL. But I also think that if you go back and kind of break down each example where you go, man, this is where they should have given the ball to Chubb. This is where they should have given the ball to Chubb. Most of those times, I think there's a reasonable explanation, if you're inside Kevin Stefanski's head, for why he did something else. Like, for example, the first play of the third quarter, you can say, okay, get the ball to Chubb. He didn't get it at the end of the first half. The Browns are struggling. We mentioned that lull on offense. Well, Stefanski has something designed where it's like a 3-step drop, get the ball out of Brissett's hands, get an easy completion, and then you probably run the ball with Chubb on second down. Instead, there's a breakdown in protection. Brissett gets sacked, and now it's 2nd and 15, and you can't hand it off to Chubb. Now, they threw it to Chubb, and then the third down, Brissett gets sacked and fumbles, and it's a big point in the game. My point is, I understand saying, hey, we have this play we really like. It's what they consider low risk coming out of halftime, and then it turns into high risk. Like, I don't blame Kevin Stefanski for that. In hindsight, you can, right? Because it blows up in his face. But there's just so many of those examples where I say, you know what? It made sense to try to throw the ball here. It made sense to hand it off to Kareem Hunt here. where it's not just Chubb. And I get he's your best player. I get all that. But the bottom line is he got 18 carries. Okay, if 21's the perfect number, you're really not that far off from 18 to 21. Does that make sense?
Scott, remind me. Yeah, remind me going back to when we were younger. What was the amount of usage that a running back gets? Like, I feel like when we were younger, every team had a main running back, and that was you didn't have the platoon like you do now. Am I wrong there?
That's a good question, Sean. But things have changed. There's a 17th game. There's better science, right? As far as guys breaking down and they pulling hamstrings and all that. I'm looking up Kevin Mack, but Mack had Biner, so that's not a great. That's probably not the best. Comparison. I'm trying to think. You can't do Derrick Henry because he's he gets the ball a million times.
What about Emmitt Smith?
Emmitt Smith. All right, I can call him real quick. He's an all-time leading rusher, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, he capped out at 377, which led the league. He led the league 3 times in rushes with 377, 368, 365. So he had a bunch. He also had a couple of years with 260, but he was high. He had over 360 like 4 times. So that's a bunch, right? And Nick Chubb, let me see what Nick Chubb's, I'm guessing Nick Chubb got to 300 one year. Chubb's most carries, he had 298. The year he finished second in rush, or he finished second twice. The first time, 2019 with Freddie Kitchens, he had 298 attempts, and he played all 16 games. So yeah, that's if you just round it off, 60 less attempts. So you're looking at 4 a game maybe from Smith to Chubb. I don't remember if Emmitt Smith ever had a second fiddle. You look at Kareem Hunt. I don't know if Emmitt Smith ever had that guy. But yeah, so let's say even if it's 20 yards or 20 carries a game, you're 320. And Chubb has never gotten to that number. So yeah, but I don't think it's necessarily a Kevin Stefanski thing as it is a 2022 thing. I'm going to look right now. I'm going to look up Nick Chubb's where he ranked. He might be the number one. He might get the most carries in the league. So I think it's the Browns fans' fascination with Nick Chubb, which I completely get. But I don't know. I just don't know. I guess my point is I don't know. That's not a hill I'm going to die on. Like, I don't think that's keeping the Browns from being that much better. I really don't. He's third in the league. Saquon Barkley's got 143. Derrick Henry's got 134 and 1 game less. And Nick Chubb's got 126.
Yeah, and that's quite a story what Saquon's doing right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
So no question. But I'm glad we brought this up because I think you just broke it down and really gave a good analyzation of what we're trying to say. And you basically said it's kind of an NFL thing. It's kind of where it is. So yeah, good answer there. I'm glad we were able to get into that. All right, you ready to move on to this week in the Bengals?
For sure.
All right. Well, I guess my first question is, it goes back to that point I just made at the very top. Do we still have faith? I mean, if they win this game, and and I hate to even say it because it's like, well, they haven't proven they deserve for us to analyze it this way, but I guess it's true. If they win this game, they're back in it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, you're not wrong. I think it's more like, and maybe this is the pessimist in me, that if they lose this game, it's almost impossible for them to go to the playoffs, right? They'd be 2-6. You head to the bye. You'd probably have to go like 8-1, right? Am I doing the math right? That puts you at 17 games. You have to go.
I'm just going to jump. I'm going to jump in and interrupt you and just say that's how I felt going into the Baltimore game. I feel like losing that Ravens game pretty much. I'm not going to say ended it, but it took away my faith in any chance of really getting back in it.
And I get that, because if they'd beaten Baltimore and then beat Cincinnati, they would have been in first place, right? So, it wasn't hard to get there. Now it's a lot harder to get there, because even if the Browns win, they'd be 3-5. Cincinnati would be 4-3 or 4-4. Baltimore play, we're taping this Thursday night. Baltimore plays Thursday night. So they could be 5-3. Like, you're still going to be a game or two back in the division, depending on all the results. But you could also be only a game out, depending on what happens. So that's not crazy. Like, right? Like you go, okay, well, that's not too big a hill to climb. You know, the Ravens have flaws. The Bengals are going to be without Jamar Chase for a while. So I guess if they win this game, I think it gives hope to at least the start of the second half. And can you bridge the gap to Deshaun Watson and win another game or two? Right? Tampa Bay's struggling. We don't know about Miami. Buffalo looks like, the best team in the league. But, you start to think, okay, can they get there? And at 3-5, I think there's still a shred of hope, right? Because you can lose 7 games for the season and still have a chance to go to the playoffs, maybe even 8. But if you lose again and it's your 5th straight loss heading to the bye, then it's not even worth talking about. So this is a hugely important game, Monday night, Halloween, division rival, all of that. And it does feel like you can't afford to lose a game to me. And maybe you're already past that. Maybe that happened in Baltimore. But I think there's a little shred of hope.
Yeah, this Bengals team started out slow, but they've gotten hot. Burrow is on fire right now. They're starting to look like the team that went to the Super Bowl. The Browns are catching them at a bad time.
There's no doubt. Now, I'm trying to get in my head because it's only been a couple hours since we've known Jamar Chase isn't going to play with a hip injury. Just the impact that will have. Because I watched the last 2 Bengals games over the last couple of days, and you're right. I mean, Burrow is lighting it up. It's like a basketball team. He gets it out of his hands in a hurry. He's got all these targets, right? When you have Chase and Boyd and Higgins and Hayden Hurst, the tight end, Joe Mixon in the backfield, like they're just moving it. It feels like they're moving it at will. And that wasn't the case early in the season. A lot of teams were playing cover 2. They were making them throw underneath and run the ball. And now they figured out a way to still be explosive and not leave Joe Burrow susceptible to a bunch of hits. This offensive line is still a little shaky, but he's getting out of his hands so fast most of the time that I feel like, that the pass rush doesn't matter at times because he's so quick and decisive with the ball. But having said that, and thinking, oh my gosh, this team is peaking or whatever, hitting on all cylinders, coming into a Browns team that will probably be without Denzel Ward. Greedy Williams was sick today and didn't practice. Greg Newsome was limited today. I assume he's going to be okay, but we need to, find out more as the week goes on. You think, it becomes a really bad matchup for the Browns. But without Jamar Chase, then is T. Higgins a number 1? He's good, but he's not Jamar Chase, right? Tyler Boyd moves up to the 2nd spot from the 3rd spot. They don't have an automatic guy that becomes now the number 3. So things will change from the Bengals offensively. And I think, Burrow's still outstanding. But not having his number 1 guy changes things. And I think changes significantly where I think if you're a Browns fan, you have more reason to hope than you did, earlier today.
So with Chase out, what is that? Are we looking to fear Mixon a little bit more? You got you still have some good receivers there, as you talked about. I mean, you got T. Higgins, you got Boyd. Who's their tight? Hayden Hurst, right? Hurst, a tight end. They got. I think that's a guy that you got to look out for now. So I guess that's the bottom line. Is there's still plenty of weaponry.
Yeah, there is. Now, Joe Mixon's got 400 yards for the season, 2 touchdowns. He's only averaging 3.3 a carry. And to me, he feels like an afterthought a little bit in this offense just because the passing game is so strong. Now, early in the year, he ran at 27, 19, 24. The last 2 weeks, it was 8 and 17 because they were throwing the ball so much and so effectively. I could see a switch to him, but it would be a pretty big departure from what I've seen the last 2 weeks. Now, it could also be to take advantage of the Browns' weak run defense, right? Which has been a little better the last 2 weeks, but we've seen all season long. So I could see Joe Mixon involved more. Maybe they go 2 tight ends and 2 receivers instead of the always 3 wides. Like they're in 3 wides in shotgun, like almost every snap, especially the last couple of weeks. Now, it's all, their coaches talk about it being a week-to-week thing, right? It's a week-to-week plan. But I wonder how much they change from 1 week to the next when you say, man, we've been doing this so well for the last couple of weeks, spreading everybody out, 3 wides. do you change it just for this one matchup? And maybe you do. Maybe they knew Chase was going to be out before today, so that when they did their game planning earlier this week, they said, okay, we're going to make a pretty big change here and try to catch the Browns off guard. So I certainly think that's something that bears watching. And as good as Burrow is and as many weapons he still has, I can't get past it's a hit not having Jamar Chase.
Yeah, no question. So, I think, didn't we talk about this last week too? I mean, you would think hopefully the Browns' game plan would just be to try to keep Burrow off the field as much as possible. And I guess the bottom line is, it's turnovers. You can't turn the ball over. I know that's, it's not like a huge expert analysis there, but really, I guess here's my point. It almost feels like they don't have to play the perfect game Monday night.
Yeah, it's and like I said, it feels like that too much, right? Like if Burrow threw 2 picks, you can go, yeah, I can see how they still beat the Browns, right? Like if Brissett throws 2 picks, it's like, oh man, there's no way they're going to beat the Bengals. And maybe that's a quarterback thing. Maybe it's the fact that you're in a 4-game losing streak, and all these other. I think it's more all these other deficiencies have shown up, and by that I mean the defense was expected to be better, and it hasn't been. And special teams have been bad, Chud. And, we're going to talk to Mike Prefer, the coordinator, on Friday. It's usually Thursday, but everything's moved back a day because of Monday night. I'd really like him to get in depth, and I'm going to try to get him to go there. Who knows? About the struggles, right? Like there's no return game. Then they give up a 46-yard return to Devin Duvernay. Then you have the penalty in the blocked field goal. It's like there's just so much that the special teams is doing wrong. And outside of Cade York's winner in week 1 and decent coverage, like there's nothing to write home about. And, if you talk about winning a game by, hey, we're going to run the ball a bunch, play good defense and good special teams. Well, if you're not playing good defense and you're not playing good special teams, then that formula goes out the window. And even when they played good defense a week ago in Baltimore, they didn't play good special teams. And you need that third segment. And I think that's been a huge disappointment this year.
What kind of atmosphere do you think we're going to be looking at here? I mean, Could you imagine what it would be like if the Browns were over 500? Maybe their record was reversed and they were 5-2 instead of 2-5. I mean, that would be an unbelievable atmosphere. It's still going to be fun, but I mean, I know I have friends that are like, I can't believe we're at this point again. I know people that don't even know if they want to go. Halloween night, they want to sell their tickets. I mean, I'm not saying that's across the board, but definitely it's less excitement from at least season ticket holders, I would think, that, could maybe try to sell their tickets and make a little money.
No, I think that's fair. I think this could be the last stand, so to speak. It's Halloween. It's a Monday night national TV game where I could see fans showing up for this. Like, hey, we'll kind of give it our last big effort here. And then after the bye, the weather's going to get worse. Then kind of saying, okay, if we go, we go. If not, let's try to sell the tickets. Like Halloween, Monday night, and I don't have the kid factor right now. I have kids trick or treating on Monday night, so wouldn't be a factor for me. But I could see wanting to go to this game because there is a good atmosphere. It'll probably be a little loonier being Halloween. It is the Bengals, so I still expect a big time atmosphere. I do. But going back to your point, if the Browns need to run the ball, right? They need to keep the ball out of Burrow's hands. They need to not turn it over. And that Bengals defense seems susceptible to me, although they're like tied for 7th in the league in scoring. They're 9th against the pass. They're 19th against the run. I think it can be vulnerable, and the Browns need to take advantage of that. And they need to, it's like you say almost every week. They need to control the clock, especially when you're playing a guy like Burrow. You need to control the clock, get Nick Chubb involved, get Kareem Hunt involved, try to shorten that game. And I think that's doable against this Bengals defense.
So last thing I want to hit you with before we get to predictions, trade. I mean, do you think the Browns are going to make a trade? And Kareem Hunt, certainly the top name at the list there of Rumorville.
Yeah, I'm interested in what you think about this, Chud. And I wrote an analysis. You can read it at brownzo.com about, I'd be open to trading Kareem Hunt. Now, I'd be more open with the loss Monday, but I don't think that would be a make or break, right? Because we talked about the playoffs are still a long shot, period. But I wouldn't just give him away. Like, first of all, I think that sends a bad message to the locker room, right? Oh, we're not trying to win. We're just getting rid of people. Like a fire sale. Like, it's hard to have a fire sale in football. How much is, like, say some team offered a 5th round pick. Is that really worth it? Like, I know the Browns love their draft picks, but I can't get excited about a 5th round pick. I can get excited about watching Kareem Hunt run the ball and catch passes. I'd also argue that if he stays with the team, then there's a greater chance of him re-signing in the offseason. And I think he's still a good player. If you're still going to run the ball a ton, it would help to have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt together. So, if the team offered me a 3rd round pick, to me, that's the value. Like, that's valuable enough where I would trade Kareem Hunt. Below that, I don't think I would. And then you get a guy like Greedy Williams, last year of his contract, he's your 3rd or 4th, he's your 4th corner if Denzel Ward gets healthy from the concussion and he's still in the protocol. If you could get a lower round pick for a 4th corner, that makes sense. But a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, like, what would you have to get to trade him? Jack Conklin. Like, other teams might give up quality assets for Jack Conklin. Now, but if you do that, you could be sacrificing the protection of your quarterback, whether it's Jacoby Brissett or Deshaun Watson, and then you probably don't have a chance to re-sign him. And I think you're better off just re-signing him because he's in the last year of his contract, signing him to an extension rather than trading him for a 2nd or 3rd round pick. I mean, that's just where I am in my head, but the Browns could view it differently as, hey, we need to recoup some of these picks from the Watson trade. This is the best way to do it.
Boy, I'll tell you, spot on. I was thinking the same thing. I just, a 4th or 5th round pick does not excite me for Kareem Hunt. I'd rather keep him than do that. The only thing is if the Browns are thinking, like you said, getting more picks to then trade those picks to get a better pick or something down the line.
Yep.
So I could get that. But just in the thought of a 4th pick for Hunt straight up, that doesn't excite me. So I agree with you. Here's right on there.
All right.
Anything else before we get to prediction time?
No, I think we hit on what I wanted to, but.
All right. All right. So as we talked about at the top of the pod here, you nailed the score right. I mean, how do you follow that up? I mean, when you hit the score right on the money, I mean, you should almost retire.
Yeah, there's no way to go but down.
No question. So now we are both, both 4-3. Is that right?
That sounds right. Yeah, because you caught me the week before, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're both 4-3. So the latest I saw, do you think the line changed? Did Jamar Chase change this at all? I had 3.5. Now I see 3. I saw the over/under go from 46.5 to 45.
I could see him affecting the over/under. I don't know how much. I mean, usually player, if a non-quarterback doesn't move the line that much. I thought I saw in my paper this morning, so before the Chase stuff, but although maybe the odds makers knew, who knows? I thought I saw it at 2 or 3. And I tell you, if it's 2 or 3, doesn't that seem low to you? Like, we talked about how good the Bengals are playing. They went to the Super Bowl a year ago. The Browns have lost 4 in a row. For it to be that low, it almost feels like one of those Vegas sucker bets to me.
Is it a trap?
Yeah. Like, I can't figure it out. Like, and when that happens, sometimes it scares me into like questioning my pick, right? Because you feel like the I say Vegas, but it's whoever's setting the lines. Like, they know something that I don't know or that I should know.
Well, they know a lot more than we know because they have all those nice buildings, right?
No, you're right. They do know something, but then that'll happen. You'll be like, oh, there'll be lines you see where I love that line, and you're right. Like, for whatever reason, the line just didn't jive with what you were thinking. But it makes you, when it's kind of when it's a few points off for me, then I kind of start second guessing myself.
Yeah. All right. Who's going to go first here?
I'll go. I don't know whose turn it is. I'll go.
All right.
I think it'll be close, and I say this every week. I think the game's going to be close. That's the NFL. That's how the Browns play. I think you'll get really good effort. Like, I don't think effort's been a problem at all. So I think going in, Jacoby Brissett kind of references when we talked to him on Thursday, is we have to empty our tank, right? It's not, hey, we get to reset at the bye. It's, hey, let's expend every ounce of energy, and then we get to recover during the bye. And that's the right attitude. I would expect the Browns to have that attitude. No one wants to be embarrassed on Monday night. So I think the Browns will play well and try hard. I just think the Bengals are a little bit better. So I'm going to go Bengals 27, Browns 24.
Whoa.
And,
All right.
and I had that before the Chase news, and I haven't adjusted it. Maybe I should bump it down a little bit, but I'm just going to stick to it.
Wow. I mean, that is incredible. We're like right on pace here. Wait till you hear my score. I think I told you after the Atlanta game, I was not going to pick the Browns again until they win.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold on to that probably. I mean, maybe there's a game where I'll be like, yeah, this is it. I can change my mind, but I'm going Bengals. They're definitely the better team. But again, I don't think, like you said, I think it's going to be close. And could they pull the victory on Monday night? Sure. Hey, maybe this is the game that could turn it all around for them, but I'm not going to predict it. So amazing how close we are here. I'm going Bengals 26, Browns 23.
Wow. All right, then. That's crazy, Chud.
Almost right on, right?
Yeah. Well, that makes me feel better. Just because, great minds. But yeah, I mean, that it just feels like that kind of game, maybe the Browns get a break, and they really haven't gotten many breaks, whether it's from the officials, whether it's a ball bouncing, that if that Jacoby Brissett fumble, if they pounce on it, right, then that's a huge point in the game, right? And the Browns have had other fumbles where the other team, I think at one point the Browns had forced like 10 fumbles and recovered 2 of them, right? So maybe they get a break. Maybe there's a tip ball goes their way. I don't know what to think about the fact that the Browns have won 4 in a row against the Bengals, including Joe Burrow's 0-3 against them. Like, I don't know how to process that. Do the Browns know something, or is that just a complete coincidence and he's due to win, right? Like that kind of feels more likely to me. But they do have some good vibes against the Bengals. The best game they played last year was against the Bengals down in Cincinnati. So I think it'll be a fun game. I think it'll be interesting. The last point from each other is if they win, I think everything calms down a little bit, right? Now, there could still be a trade or two at the deadline, but generally speaking, I think the conversation dies down. You go into the bye week, you can relax a little bit. If they lose, and especially if it's an ugly loss, then you get all the questions during the bye about job security and trades and benchings, and right. And I think from the organizational perspective, they'd be so much better off with a win where they would allow everything to quiet down. You come back after the bye, figure out a way to get through 3 weeks, and then you get Deshaun Watson coming back.
Yeah, and as we all know, he's going to win every game, right? So
he's not, but at least that I don't want to get into Deshaun Watson there, but that's something. If you're a Browns fan that isn't turned off by Deshaun Watson, like that's a reason to watch the end of the season, right? Like, how's the offense look? How's he doing? Does he look like by the end of the year? Does he look like the quarterback you thought he would? Right? Like, there's a hook to the end of the season now, but you got to get to that. You got to get there if you're the organization without the season turning into a complete disaster.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. We'll see if you can. What do you call it again in the press box? The
noser. Yeah.
All right.
Noser.
We'll see. Hopefully, we're talking about a win next week. Anyway, but
yeah.
All right. Hey, one quick shout out. For the morning show on Go. We've been busy all week, Scott. I don't know if you're dressing up for Halloween, but everyone on the morning show on Go on Channel 3, we've been taping stuff all week. We have our big Halloween costume special on Monday morning, so that will be on between 6:30 and 7. So make sure to tune in.
I'm guessing you can't spoil what you are, huh?
Absolutely not.
Well,
but I'll tell you.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you this: I'm not a Browns player.
Fair enough. Well, and I'll tell you this, Judd. First of all, I'm not a big Halloween guy. Number 2, I'm not showing up at the press box Monday night in a costume. So there's no way I would do that.
Dress up as a noser.
I got a big nose. Work. I already got one of those.
Me too. All right.
Well, perfect. I appreciate it, Chud, as always. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks.